Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the esteemed organizers of this forum, Honorable Robert Pittenger, it's for you, and Honorable Congressman Mike Rogers. Without you, this excellent forum would not have been possible. And of course, my gratitude to each of you for finding the time and opportunity to come here. When I was preparing for this presentation, I thought about showing you a series of videos from battlefield. But then I decided against it. Because in 6 months' time, they will already be outdated. Because they exist now in time of progress, huge progress. And we are not here to talk about today, but about the future, first of all. We are on the verge of rapid and sweeping changes in the global defense sector. And not only in the defense sector. We don't yet fully realize the extent of these changes. But the contour of this new reality are already visible in the war in Ukraine. The first thing we must recognize is that there is not longer a place for humans on the battlefield. Totally. Not in the air, not on land, not on water. And of course, one can insist that the number of infantry troops produces results. We heard a lot of this thesis in the media, in speeches. But superiority of technologies over the number of infantry has been proven many times in our history. On American continent, in Asia, in Europe. Unmanned systems are now the main dogma of modern military doctrine. And they radically change everything from the structure of army and its weapons to the functionality of individual soldiers. The war in Ukraine has shown that people are the most vulnerable and expensive resource in the world. Moreover, the amount of this resource is limited for physical and moral reasons. Applying this dogma in practice will mean that controlled equipment no longer needs a crew. That means that, the requirements for armament military equipment are reduced. The second, its size will decrease and it will become more mobile. The third, weapons will be controlled remotely. The fourth, the overall power of each weapon will increase. And the last, soldiers are now becoming drone operators working from bunkers or the rear, or police control the rear part of the battlefield and performing mainly actually logistical and security functions. Moreover, it has already become clear that military equipment dating from the 20th century and the early 21st century has lost its relevance on the mother battlefield. It's too vulnerable. It simply has no target to hit on the battlefield. This applies to tanks, artillery, aircraft carriers, combat aircraft, and other types of weapons on their current form. It seems that war is becoming cheaper and equalizing the capabilities of most countries, as many NATO generals believe. But this is a mistaken conclusion. The reduction in the cost of weapons is instantly offset by multiple increase in their quantity. So, let's consider the levels of warfare based on changing requirements for weapons. First part, tactical level. This is the battlefield itself, the kill zone. I think everyone heard a lot of, last year, about this. In essence, it's the front line up to 20 miles wide, controlled by various types of kamikaze drones. Nothing alive survives in this territory. Nothing, totally. Any equipment is destroyed almost instantly. In fact, combat operations are conducted by drones located in underground bunkers, or even deep in the rear. Accordingly, an offensive by large units is doomed to fail. Any success in advancing can only be achieved by spreading troops out as much as possible, and using maximum camouflage. It's time to forget about tanks columns and artillery batteries. The main task of the troops in such conditions is gradually shift the kill zone border deeper into enemy territory. The success of such operations critically depends on the ability to quickly produce a maximum number of inexpensive drones. In addition, about future, the one drones, one target, one operator algorithm is becoming a thing of the past. It's being replaced by a concept in which a single operator uses AI to control fleets of drones, which with approach, a single operator will be able to control not just 100 square meters of territory, yards of territory, but 10 of square miles of the front line. This, in turn, reduces the need for mass mobilization, which was technology of the 20th century, and puts the professional technical skills of each individual operator at the forefront. Combat operations, the kill zone, can be carried out in two scenarios. Either the first scenario, instant collapse of one of the opponent's fronts due to the unpreparedness for this level of warfare. Or, second scenario, prolonged position warfare is during the First World War. Next part, strategic level. When transition to the stage of position warfare, the Army's ability to provide the kill zone with sufficient weapons in timely manner becomes key. It's also important to maintain control over combat operations and, accordingly, to deprive the enemy of the ability to do the same. The key factor is the Army's ability to protect its logistics and inflict maximum damage on the enemy logistic in 80-mile strip outside the kill zone. First and foremost, ground logistic routes limited by natural terrain are targeted. It's a vulnerable point for any battlefield. Accordingly, all logistics doomed to move along ground routes are easily cut off from the air. To the end, it's already necessary to move towards providing the Army with transport drones. Prototype of such drones already in development. The advantage is maneuverable movement, regardless of terrain and minefields. At the same time, it's essential to provide air defense with interceptor drones in order to protect frontline logistics covering up to 100 meters above the ground. Another important point is to maintain the rhythm of logistic deliveries between distributed system of underground warehouses. The next targets that must be struck are weapons factories, logistics centers, and drone operator centers, which are located deep in the rear or in underground bunkers in close proximity to the front line. For example, while I was in my way to meet you, there was a massive drone attack by Shahed on the faster railway junction in my district. The aim was to disrupt our railway logistics, and this railway junction is located more than 400 miles from the front line. Their destruction is impossible without missiles and bomb strike. Accordingly, there is a global task to move from expensive, invulnerable manned aircraft to reusable unmanned carrier drones, which will carry out the bombing. For example, 1 week ago, Turkey is already testing fully fledged unmanned aircraft, while new modifications of drones equipped with air-to-air missiles have appeared in the skies over Ukraine. This is the future. Not F-16, not F-35, and other model pilots fighter jets. The reduction is the cost and minimization of the carrier due to the absence of a crew, and accordingly the need to ensure its protection will make even the inevitable percentage of losses of such drones acceptable. A very distant example of such a carrier drone will be first stage of the SpaceX launch vehicle. The transition to unmanned aviation will allow for mass use of guided aerial bombs, significantly cheaper than missile launches. In addition, such drones can perform the functions of aircraft carriers for fleet of combat kamikaze drones. I will not describe the maritime theater of operation separately, except to say that everything mentioned above applies to it as well. It takes very little to make all this reality, but there is a key factor. The Army must have access to space group of satellites, no lower than Starlink level for coordination of combat units, uninterrupted communications, and, of course, reconnaissance. China is already investing billions in space in this direction. Moreover, the transition to new technologies inevitably increases the role of cyber operations. Disruption of logistics, power outages, or communications failure, even for few hours, can give the enemy a window of opportunity to carry out a targeted tactical operation. Not to mention that a compromised cyber system allows the enemy to strike deep into your area and amplifies the consequences, making it impossible to quickly restore critical infrastructure. Technological innovation in the Army and research development in general must be prioritized in defense funding for the development of domestic production of all components, from the engines for drones to various sensors. It's a question of national security for any country. Currently, the lion's share of components for unmanned devices is produced in China. This is a challenge for any country that wants to claim anything in geopolitics. It's the same applies to the development of AI. And of course, existing military doctrines and defense systems need to be completely revised. It will change everything, from the troops to high-rank commanders. The need to complete rearmament of military troops, and most critically, general staff must realize that for the army to transition to modernity, its need must transform itself into kind of Amazon, Tesla, or SpaceX. Because we will not see any soldiers, any humanity on the battlefield. The requirements for synchronization interaction between military units will be increased in the context of universal digitalization. And I have a question for every one of you. How many countries are currently capable of this? I think no one. In Europe, and I think even American troops and army is obsolete for now. I hope I have managed to convey that you are now facing a global choice to decide which path your country will take. Will it remain in the past and step in the future? Thank you for your attention.